let's talk about The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This was actually my introduction to Cormac McCarthy, and I think I've done this to myself with a few authors now, where there's so much anticipation that I can't help building up a story in my mind so that when I finally do get round to it, it can't possibly compare to what I expected. And so it feels worse than it actually is. And I think that's what's happened here. I didn't dislike this. I mean, it's so unbelievably bleak. If you're a fan for darkness, dramatics, emotional characters, I think you'll like this quite a bit. But my biggest issue was to do with styling. It got to a point where it felt a bit tedious and nothing was really happening. And I can point to too many other books that I've read that execute this same concept in a more successful way. But yes, The Road, this post-apocalyptic, very American, dystopian sort of thriller. It's a father and his son walking down the road, just trying to survive, really. I would have liked at least allusions to what had happened, you know? Like, I don't need you to fill in all the dots, but there was nothing to hold on to. Like, things with speculative fiction, I want to be able to speculate, funnily enough, but this was more interested in telling like the post-apocalyptic side of things, like the experience of trying to survive in a world that has like abandoned you. And that was effective, but it's not what I personally want from a story like this. This book really reminded me of I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, and that book does such a better job, I feel, in making you feel the sort of depression of it all and really think about what are they going to do? How are they going to make their way in the world when almost nothing is left? And it's interesting as well, like there's enough mysterious pieces left behind that you can sort of think about what happened in that world. Like looking back on it, I probably should have given that book a much higher score. I think I gave it like 4.25 stars, which isn't bad, but it's a book now that like months later, I have at least one moment a week where I'm still thinking about it, and that's like, whoa, okay, that was impactful and it resonated with me, and I don't know if this necessarily will have that same effect. The writing style as well, for the most part, is so American, like classic American, like very Hemingway. It's that sort of matter of fact, this is the story, whether you like it or not, take it or leave it, this is the story. And I'm just like, okay, it could be more interesting though, couldn't it? Like, I know people will praise The Old Man and the Sea until the cows come home, but it's a little boring. And I feel that with this as well. It's like, what else can go on here? Instead of, well, this is the story. You can think about it all you want, academics, but this is that story. And if you don't like it, then that's tough. It's the story. Like, it's very that. My favourite part of this book by far is the dialogue between the father and the son. Some of their conversations, I think they were meant to be comedic because I was howling. Some of the ways that the things that they talk about, like there are several conversations where it's just like, Dad, are we gonna die today? No, son, we're all right. You can be honest with me, Dad. Okay, well, we might die, but I don't think we will. Okay. Like, that's so many of their conversations. I am not exaggerating. Like, it's so unhinged, and I was howling. Maybe that's my sense of humour. Maybe you're supposed to be horrified at, this brave new world that they're dealing with. But I was tickled pink by the, tone of their conversation, like, the dourness of it. Just like, Dad, are we ever going to eat people? No, son, no, we're never going to eat people. Okay. Like, maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but it almost felt like it was mocking the sort of very puritanical culture of Americans who, think that, oh, that will never be me. Like, I'll never be one of those savages out on the road that's doing anything to survive. And if that is what the book is saying, then props to Cormac McCarthy, very clever, but it could have been more entertaining overall. You know who else does this concept so much better? Stephen King. Have you read The Long Walk? The Long Walk is an underrated gem that is basically this concept actualised in a more meaningful way, and it's getting adapted into a film soon, I believe, so very excited for that. The Long Walk doesn't get enough praise. I would much rather, if we're recommending books here, I'd much rather read The Long Walk over this. I mean, technically it's Richard Bachman, not Stephen King, but same difference, you know? It's that same, like, oh, we've just got to continue striving on, the human condition, isn't it a bitch? It's the same idea. But this, I don't know, there are moments where this lets up and they're just chilling and it doesn't feel that bad. The Long Walk is non-stop. It's a never-ending, tragic few days and you feel every moment. So I would fully choose that book over this one. This low-key reminds me of The Death of Grass, which is again like a sort of sci-fi speculative old English classic where all of the plants die and they have to like travel up north to try and get away from this virus that's killing all of the crops. But again, much like that story, there's not enough character work. It doesn't really put enough things out there to get me personally involved. It doesn't feel like there are stakes because it's just this father and son. I mean, don't get me twisted. When we get to the ending of this book, which I will not spoil, of course, I would never do that. But when we do get to the ending of this, it's emotional, like, it's pretty good. Like, the book ends in a way that, probably the best way that it could end, and it's ambiguous, and there's a possible message behind it. I've heard a few takes out there, some of which are, like, pretentious to say the least, but at least it's open-ended enough that you can think about it. So I don't think this is a bad book by any means. It's just, I don't think it's one for the ages, and it's a shame because I expected to have my socks fully knocked off because I hear nothing but praise for Cormac McCarthy. Am I still going to read Blood Meridian, No Country for Old Men, the Border trilogy? Of course I am, but I have a feeling most of them will be superior to this. Like, I'm kind of surprised this won the Pulitzer, only because it's just, it's a bit too straightforward for me. It's a bit like, here's the story. Like, as I said, it's very Hemingway, which I know Americans love, so maybe that's how it won. I don't know. What do you think?